The first word in this week's Parsha is spelled with a small aleph at the end of the word. The commentators explain why. When God was dictating the Torah to Moshe, Moshe was writing it down, and they got up to this word, Vayikra, God calling out to Moshe. Moshe objected. He said to God respectfully, I'm uncomfortable writing the word this way. Vayikra, that refers to a friend calling out to a colleague, and I'm only a human being and you're God. I don't think it's appropriate. Can I write it without the aleph? It'll be Vayikra, the same way that later when you call out to the sorcerer Bilam, that's how you write it. And God said, no, write it with the aleph. And Moshe said, okay, but can I at least make the aleph smaller? And God said, okay. So we have this beautiful scene showing Moshe's incredible modesty, the most humble man who ever lived. But one commentator asks a great question. Look earlier in the Torah in Parshat Yisro. In connection with Moshe going up a mountain for the first time to get the 10 Commandments and get the Torah, we're told God called out to Moshe. And the word Vayikra is used, and it's spelled with an aleph. And the aleph is regular size. Why didn't Moshe object the first time God used that word in connection with calling out to Moshe? And that commentator proposes a few different answers. I want to focus on one of them. He says, the first time around when God called out to Moshe, Moshe was poor. All of the other Jews, before they left Egypt, at God's request, had asked their Egyptian neighbors for gold and silver as slave reparations. And so they all became wealthy. But Moshe didn't get that opportunity. He was otherwise occupied. He went to go get Yosef's bones to fulfill the promise that Yosef's brothers had made to him, that they would take his bones with them when they left Egypt and bury him in Israel. But something happened in between. Before this week's Parsha, Moshe had carved the second set of tablets to replace the ones that he had broken after the golden calf. And the Midrash tells us that when he finished carving, God told him, the remnants, the shavings from the places where you carved the letters, you get to keep those. And the luchos, the tablets, were made out of sapphire, so Moshe became wealthy. So now, when he's writing Vayikra for the second time, he's a wealthy man. And there's no greater predictor of the possibility of conceit, of immodesty, than wealth. Go gather all the big shots in the world. You'll see the most common characteristic is that they're wealthy. And it doesn't matter how the wealth is earned. We know this. We even have a phrase for it. Someone who's born wealthy will sometimes say, yeah, he was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple. So in Moshe's case, even though there's no reason to be conceited, God handed him the wealth. Doesn't matter. Once somebody's wealthy, they can become conceited. And so that's why we get the lesson now. As God later says in the Torah, you're going to get to Israel. You're going to start making bank. You're going to get wealthy. And you're going to think, it was my strength, my talent, my ingenuity, my innovation, my hard work that made me this treasure. I earned this money myself. No, you didn't. Yes, you could take pride in having worked hard, but that's not why you earn the money. God decides who's going to be successful and to what extent. God's the one that puts the number next to our name every Rosh Hashanah. And to the extent we take pride in our income, that is pushing God out of the equation. And that's a terrible thing. And so we get the lesson here to remind us, every penny that we make, it all came from God. We have to thank him rather than taking pride in our bank accounts.